If you could take that Bitcoin that's mainly just being hodled and unlock that by like letting people borrow dollars using that as collateral or letting people lend it out in a semi-trustless manner, this would unlock a huge amount of economic activity that I think is beneficial for Bitcoin in the long term. It's good because it brings people back from other crypto ecosystems into Bitcoin. It allows Bitcoiners to do more things with their Bitcoin when they want to. Again, I'm a big hodler, so if you want to hodl, that's great. I'm not pushing anyone to do anything else they don't want to do with their Bitcoin, but a lot of hodlers want to borrow dollars and go buy a home or something. Yeah. That would be hugely beneficial.
Today we're talking to Dan Held, a seasoned Bitcoin expert, investor, co-founder, educator, marketing advisor. You've been involved in the space for maybe since 2013. How has your view on Bitcoin's role in the financial world evolved over the last decades?
Yeah, well, what's interesting is that my view on Bitcoin hasn't changed that much. Mm-hmm. So I was one of the, I got in Bitcoin in about 2011. That's when I created my first Mt. Gox account. It was December 2011. And then I built my first products in 2013. Mm-hmm. My original core thesis for Bitcoin is that Bitcoin is a digital gold. Yeah. So as a digital gold, Bitcoin's value prop has not changed, and that's really the majority of why people hold Bitcoin today and why Bitcoin adoption has occurred. So for me, nothing's really changed in that regard. I was never a big fan of the payments narrative, so nothing for me changed that way. Recently, though, DeFi on top of Bitcoin, I think, is something new, but that I wouldn't say changes Bitcoin's core value prop or what Bitcoin's mission is. DeFi is just more of the enablement of Bitcoin to become truly that global reserve asset and being able to leverage that global reserve asset to lend it out, borrow against it, and do other things. So for me, my original core thesis of digital gold hasn't changed, and DeFi is, I think, an additive layer to Bitcoin's narrative.
And is there anything you wish had turned out differently or met your expectations more?
Sure, I think life is full of disappointments, but overall, I mean, I'm ecstatic to be and to see Bitcoin where it's at today. I mean, back when I got into it, we were a dozen people in a San Francisco basement that used to hang out, and Bitcoin was worth $10 because it was worth $10 because that's what the world in aggregate felt it was worth. So to see Bitcoin succeed today, to see where we're at, is incredible. So I'm hugely appreciative of where we're at. I think on the negative side, there were so many scams and so much garbage created in the crypto world that it's a little disappointing for humanity. But needless to say, it's a free market and you can't stop people from buying what they want to buy.
Yeah. You're investing in Bitcoin DeFi. What's that? And isn't Bitcoin the most DeFi thing there is?
Yeah, Bitcoin is already natively DeFi, right? It's decentralized finance and a decentralized money, which is the most important part of decentralized finance. DeFi on Bitcoin represents the other things that we would call DeFi. NFTs, tokens, lending, borrowing, yield farming. These are activities that we saw people wanted a decentralized financial access to over on Ethereum and Solana. And so those are coming back to Bitcoin. And why is that a big deal? It's a big deal because these markets, Ethereum and Solana, are massive, multi-billion dollar markets, tens of billions, hundreds of billions of dollar markets of people doing these activities, and that was pulling attention away from Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the largest asset, not just the largest asset larger than Ethereum, it's larger than Bitcoin, it's larger than Ethereum, Solana, and all of them combined. If you could take that Bitcoin that's mainly just being hodled and unlock that by letting people borrow dollars using that as collateral or letting people lend it out in a semi-trustless manner, this would unlock a huge amount of economic activity that I think is beneficial for Bitcoin in the long term. It's good because it brings people back from other crypto ecosystems into Bitcoin. It allows Bitcoiners to do more things with their Bitcoin when they want to. Again, I'm a big hodler, so if you want to hodl, that's great. I'm not pushing anyone to do anything else they don't want to do with their Bitcoin, but a lot of hodlers want to borrow dollars and go buy a home or something. Yeah. That would be hugely beneficial. And this long-term solves Bitcoin's security budget issue. Long-term, the block reward, which is comprised of newly minted Bitcoins and transaction fees, this is what compensates the miners to behave properly. as the newly minted Bitcoin drop over time through halvings, transaction fees need to rise to compensate for that loss in subsidy. Long term, this is how Bitcoin secures itself.
Yeah. And what do you think are the most significant barriers with regards to getting Bitcoin to mainstream adoption?
This is a classic problem that I've looked at, especially as a marketer. So my background is in marketing. Yeah. I think number go up has been the greatest teacher of Bitcoin possible. I thought too, like in the beginning, I'm a libertarian type, so that's why I was attracted to it. It's hard to teach people libertarian values, hard to teach them about why Bitcoin is important. How do you teach them about the existing financial system, the Fed, how governments are printing money? To describe that first, to describe the problem, and then point at Bitcoin is a lot harder than just people buying it because it's a good investment. So most people get into Bitcoin because of number go up. I'd prefer people read a couple books about libertarian ideology, Austrian economics, and why the existing banking system is so flawed, but most people won't do that.
Yeah. So you have a large following as an educator. So what is the most misunderstood concept about Bitcoin?
That's a great question. Well, first and foremost, people think Bitcoin has no intrinsic value or that it's make-believe magic internet money, which people aren't wrong.
Many believe there is no intrinsic value either.
That's right. There is no intrinsic value with Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is a made-up money. Just like fiat money, just like your government money, it's the same thing in terms of they're both similarly made up. Bitcoin has different ways that we can believe and trust in its monetary policy, though, that's very different than fiat currency. So I think that's misconstrued where people believe that Bitcoin's this dirty magic internet money and fiat money is real money. Bitcoin and fiat money similarly are a shared aggregate belief. Other things that misconceptions around Bitcoin, that it's only used for drugs and money laundering. That used to be like an old narrative. Nowadays, I think it's more legitimate. People think Bitcoin's very wasteful with energy consumption, but people forget that Bitcoin, to protect the Bitcoin network, we had to have miners provably expend energy, and through that secures the Bitcoin network. So this energy is not wasted. Similarly, we wouldn't criticize someone for building a wall or a vault around things that they love. We all agree that it makes sense to defend against attackers. So the Bitcoin network uses energy in the real world to build a digital wall around the Bitcoin ledger.
Yep. You've been a marketing leader as well, right? So what do you find is the most effective marketing strategy to get the word about Bitcoin out there? How do you catch the newcomers, let's say?
Yeah, well, like I said, number go up, I think, is the greatest marketing message for Bitcoin. So usually what I tell people is I'm like, look, it's risky, it's volatile, and it's this new emergent tech that's hard to understand. That's okay to feel that way. And it is those things. Don't make people feel bad for their criticisms when they initially tell you about, where they're like, you know your family and friends at dinner or at dinner.
Very hard.
Yeah, it's very hard, right? So you agree with their criticisms, but you go, you know what? But look at what the returns have been and be like, this is what you can do now from a portfolio construction perspective. Put in 1% of your net worth. If it goes to zero, you only lost 1%. But if it goes to up 10x, which is normally what it does, then now it's 10% of your portfolio. You can't ignore it as an opportunity. And so with that, be like, put in 1%, and then a lot of people will learn about it after they do that.
Yep.
And that's when you have the opportunity where now they're checking the price every day. And I know this sounds a little bit less educational, but sometimes this is how you have to start with things.
Have a little skin in the game.
Exactly. So get 1% in. A lot of people can agree to putting in 1%.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you see the global regulatory approach and acceptance of Bitcoin develop over the next 3 years?
Well, it very much depends on the U.S. elections. I think Trump's approach is a lot less regulatory issues than he's basically embraced all of crypto. He would also got a lot of the U.S. regulatory agencies that are currently attacking the crypto industry, whereas Harris has said dubious things on if she would support crypto or not. U.S. sets the standard for the world, typically, so it's really dependent on the U.S. election.
Yeah. I think so. Last question. Is scarcity a fundamental feature of Bitcoin, or is it a symptom or consequence of the fundamental features of Bitcoin?
I think we might be.
We got to stop. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.